Welcome to the Acoustic Guitar Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Grizzle, and that was Gwenifer Raymond playing her interpretation of our theme song. In this episode, you'll hear from a distinguished group of guitarists, Diego Figueiredo, Gwenifer Raymond, and Yasmin Williams, who each share their unique perspectives on composing for solo guitar. We discuss the difference between improvising and refining a piece, techniques for making one guitar feel like a full band, and a whole lot more. Before we get into it, I'd like to take a moment to thank Tonewood Amp for sponsoring this episode. Tonewood Amp is a game-changing multi-effects device that attaches to any acoustic guitar. Get reverb, delay, and more. No amp required. Learn more at tonewoodamp.com. And one more thing while I have your attention. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you've probably noticed the music played at the top of every episode. It was composed by Acoustic Guitar Magazine's editor, Adam Perlmutter. We love hearing the interpretations by our podcast guests, and we'd like to hear yours too. You can find the music to play at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus. You don't have to be a paying member to access it. You'll also see instructions for how to submit your own recording for the chance to be featured on a future episode. I'm sure this episode will give you some ideas and inspiration for making the tune your own. Again, that site is patreon.com/acousticguitarplus. You'll find that link in the show notes, along with additional resources related to this episode as well as our guests. Now, without further ado, let's begin with our guests describing their music, starting with Gwenifer.
I guess I came from kind of one of the more common roots of fingerstyle, kind of that country blues into sort of John Fay sort of style stuff, that whatever you might call primitive guitar. I've been calling it Welsh primitive because I am Welsh. It's sort of, I guess I kind of dig a riff as much as anything else. So I kind of go for the more hooky based, I guess, guitar. I like a recognizable tune. I listen to a lot of solo instrumental classical music as well, which I feel like has got those banging riffs essentially. So I guess I also come from like a punk background, so I'm quite an aggressive player, so I think my style is kind of identified by a fairly aggressive style, but with like hopefully a fairly strong melodic through line, if that makes sense, again in that finger picking, alternating thumb country blues style.
Great. Diego, your turn.
I am originally from Brazil, so I started playing since I was 6 years old, the traditional Brazilian music, the samba and the bossa nova. That was my first contact with the guitar. My father used it to play the nylon string guitar, and he introduced me the old traditional Brazilian music. That was my first contact with music. Then later I discovered the jazz and the classical music. So I play fingerstyle with the right hand technique, and I'd say I am a mix of Brazilian music, jazz, and classical music. So that's my conception of music.
I always have such a hard time answering this question, so bear with me. Basically, just instrumental guitar with other things added in. Like I play kalimba with guitar too and use tap shoes and stuff. And I play guitar a lot of the time with it in my lap, kind of like a lap tapping style, I guess. So basically I just use a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs to tap on the fretboard very quickly. And I use my right hand to do a lot of percussive stuff on the body of the guitar and use my left hand for tapping and other stuff. And I do regular fingerstyle stuff too. So for me, it's just making the sound as full as possible. How can I make one guitar sound like many? How can I keep an audience entertained throughout a show with just me on stage? How can I make it fun for me? And how can I make these songs as full and fleshed out as possible? Which is why I add other instruments sometimes. So that's the most important thing, and kind of has always been, I guess.
What are some of the techniques that you do to create that? Because as solo guitarists, I think that is something that I hear a lot. It never sounds like just a guitar. It's like, oh, that's a guitar and a bass. No, it's just a guitar. That's a guitar and percussion. No, that's just like that's like 6 guitars. No, that's one guitar, So what are some of the techniques? Maybe if you want to demonstrate them a little bit, I don't know, but some of the techniques you use to actually fill in, like you said, that the band.
Just being able to play bass lines with a melody, like I can play a little bit, I guess. So just being able to play the melody and the bass at the same time and have kind of like notes that ring out that can provide harmony and whatever is important. And with kind of the lap tapping style, I can kind of do a lot more with bass. And yeah, you can kind of have both, which is great, since that's kind of what a band is anyway. You know, you got the bass dude or whoever, you got the lead player, you got the rhythm player, you got the vocalists. You can kind of do all of that with just a guitar.
Gwenifer, how do you find yourself doing that? Do you have specific techniques that you use? Because I have a hard time sometimes in your albums that I've heard. I have a hard time believing that's one guitar. You know, it's a lot of sound going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I never really made a conscious effort. I mean, I came into this just playing these sort of weird little blues instrumentals because I was just a solo guitar player and I don't sing. And I was just, okay, I'll just make my own little songs and didn't think anyone would ever care, right? And then I just, okay, some people kind of dig it. And then, yeah, people would say, oh, it sounds like there's all these guitars on stage. And I really have never attempted to do that on purpose. I guess it's just the way I play. I mean, I do play fast, and I think that comes from I do everything kind of fast, including talk. But yeah, coming out of that kind of punk background. I mean, yeah. I mean, to be honest though, I kind of like the tension that lies between. Sometimes it's really really big. You kind of go that kind of loud shit. And then you sort of turn that into that nice, it's like the loud, quiet, loud, right? It's that those two together is kind of is the tension, right? And I guess that's what's interesting. But in terms of technique, I just hit it really hard, and that seems to work for
me. Diego, how about you? What are some techniques that you use to kind of fill in the rest of the band, so to speak, when you're playing solo?
Yes, so I try to mix the balance between the two hands. Like I really love to do the melody, the harmony together. So I explore a lot of the thumb with the fingers. When I play the Brazilian accent, like so we are talking about technique and style, like that kind of feeling of the Brazil, that mix of Brazilian jazz. So it's one point that I explore a lot. And for sure, the right hand, the balance of the right hand. But when I explore like more solos, like so I use these two fingers to just solo. To use
just your index and your middle finger there.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time, and when I accompany, or when I use the bass lines, for example, when I use a tremolo too, that sounds like a. So it sounds like two guitars doing one thumb doing one finger, and so there are different techniques that I use when I do a full solo concert, and I mix all these techniques too. So that's a combination of the three styles that I say: the Brazilian jazz and the classical.
Yeah. Keep the bass line going. Almost sounds independent from everything else you're doing there. There's a lot of practice, I'm sure. We're talking about storytelling without words a lot of the time here. So, I mean, how do you like to convey those emotions, those ideas, those images in your compositions, specifically with your guitar?
My compositions, there are a lot of situations that inspire me to compose, like travels is one of the different places and things like that. One of my latest albums last year, it's called Antarctica. This album, all the songs was inspired by a trip that I went in a cruise ship to Antarctica continent.
Gwenifer, how about you? How do you convey those emotions, those ideas, and those images in your composition, specifically with your guitar?
One of the things I enjoy about instrumental, especially solo instrumental pieces, is this ability to convey, I guess, more abstract ideals. I think part of the power is you don't have to form a coherent sentence, and therefore you're kind of able to represent more abstract conceptual ideas, kind of things a little bit more about some difficult to disclose feeling or whatever. So to me, it's almost like, I don't know, you're kind of pulling notes out of the ether. Really, it's like Valis speaking, through the windows, and I just play, and then things come out, and it's not really until afterwards sometimes that I think, oh, this really reminds me of this thing. I guess this is what this song's about, because it's kind of been placed in my brain already, right? So maybe that piece of music is simply that bit coming out. I think it's more about, I'm kind of more of the opposite. I like to discover what the song's about rather than try and write a song about something.
Yeah. Yasmin, how about you? How do you get those images, those ideas, those big ideas, those big emotions out, specifically on your guitar?
So I relate a lot to what Gwenifer said in terms of not really coming in with any sort of like set idea or concept. I kind of just notes happen, and then maybe when a song is finished, I can kind of figure out what it's about, if it's about anything. But I feel like more lately, I'm kind of taking a more like cinematic approach to how I write things, in terms of like the song is kind of like a story playing out, whether if it's like related to travels. Like I somewhat recently went to a really picturesque, gorgeous city and wrote a song about that, or related to how I feel about something happening like socially, like when I wrote songs about the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening here. Now, typically, it's kind of like both. Like a song might be related to something, or it might not be, and it is what it is. How I capture an emotion, I don't really know. I don't have like a set formula for writing a song. Like, oh, I want this to sound sad. Let me insert some seventh. I don't know. I don't do that. It just kind of is what it is. It's whatever, I guess, the heart wants, and then the mind kind of just comes up with the correct notes, and not correct, but correlating notes to bring out whatever the heart is saying.
So it sounds like a lot of improv is important in your composition process.
Absolutely. It's basically a lot of it is improv. It's rare that I kind of write a melody or something or rhythm in advance, but sometimes I do.
Do you have those moments where you're out on a walk or something and you get a melody in your head? Or is it when you sit down to write and you're like, okay, I'm writing a song right now, what's going to come to me?
Definitely if I'm on a walk or something. I rarely, if ever, sit down to write anything. I will sit down to practice, quote unquote, because I don't really practice that much, but when I do, I like to kind of like doodle is what I call it. Kind of like, I don't know, if you were ever in class and got bored and just started drawing pictures on something. That's kind of what I think of like my compositional process is. It's just kind of seeing what sticks.
Gwenifer, how about you?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a lot of setting. I mean, I honestly don't do even if I do think of a melody, it's sort of gone by the time I sit at my guitar, or it turns into something completely different. I've definitely written a few songs trying to play someone else's song, having no idea how that song goes, and then writing something completely different. That's kind of happened before. But no, yeah, it's as I say, I think sometimes things just make themselves apparent. I mean, a lot of it is about finding, as I mentioned before, I'm a sucker for a really good hook, and I think I don't know. Maybe yeah. Everyone's brain's different, but I can't think of a good hook. It's kind of I don't really write the songs. They write themselves. I'm like just sort of there to catch them, if that or some equally pretentious nonsense.
Diego, you've written a lot of songs with other instruments too. I mean, a lot of your albums have other players on them too. They're not just all solo guitar albums. For you, do you write that stuff together with those other players? Do you have an idea going into it with them? Do you have your composition ready to go and you say, here's the chart, play it? How do you like to work?
So depends on the situation. I have different records that's just original songs, and that I compose thinking about the guitar and about other instruments. Like my latest album now called My Word, I just released a couple of days ago. It's our original songs. So, and I compose thinking about instruments. Like I have a trio, like playing drums, bass, and guitar. So I compose something specifically thinking about that combination. I have a couple songs just guitar and trumpet with a great trumpet player, Nicholas Payton. So, and I compose a song specifically for that situation, like for guitar and trumpet. Other songs with guitar and clarinet. So depends on the situation. And I have other recordings and during my concert that I do not original songs, arrangements of jazz standards and Brazilian music by Antonio Carlos Jobim, by other composers. So it's another different situation because I like to arrange. So I get a song, a well-known song, and I put my approach on arranging, change the chords, change the harmonies. So it's another thing. But for sure, when I play with different instruments, when I play solo, I'm totally free to do whatever I want, to improvise, to create other harmonic situations and anything. But when I play with the other musicians, like a band or even a duo, I have to think more about what we'll do together. So that's two different situations.
Yeah, and when you are writing, solo compositions, do you like to improvise in the moment and kind of go with it, or are you more structured? Do you write it all out?
When I am a mix of classical music too. I just got the technique of the right hand of the classical music and some songs that I like. But I never play the same song the same way. I always improvise. So if you see me playing one song, every time I play this song, I play different because I put some improvisation in the middle. I start differently. That's my favorite thing, to create and to improvise. So if I play Girl from Ipanema 100 times, I play 100 times different, with different progression, different improvisations. So that's my, I'd say. But for sure, there are some specific situations that you have to follow the rules. When I play with orchestra, for example, I have to follow the structure of the song. When I play in a recording, that we have to follow the structure of the song, we have to follow. But when I play solo, totally free.
When you do the solo and it's your song, do you still improvise? Will you still play it 100 different ways, 100 times, even if it's your own composition?
Yes, but everything depends on the moment. Sometimes I really just play the song.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I feel, it depends if I am on a studio, on a concert. It depends the kind of the audience, the response of the audience. So there are a lot of things that helps me to decide which way to go, or just play the song the way it is. So I never know. I don't know what I do. So actually, so depends on the situation, but most of the time I improvise.
Yeah, and so when you're, a lot of the time people, guitarists will talk about serving the song. You play what it's going to serve the song, and when it's a solo composition that you wrote and you're playing the only instrument on it, that might change, because if you're in a band, you got to lay back and let someone else solo, that kind of thing. How do you, balance that serving the song, right, with your own composition with, if you want to shred a little bit, you want to get flashy with it, how do you balance those two sides when it is your own solo composition?
Yeah, it's hard. It's not easy, like to take that decision in the moment. If I will just play the song, the radio, or if I improvise or something. So I don't have any like real decision if I do that or not, because I take it, I leave the moment tell me what to do in some situations. But the most important thing for me is try to make that beautiful. So if the song, if you go to a beautiful way, if for my taste, of course, and I try to make that as beautiful as possible for me and for the audience.
Gwenifer, how do you see yourself in relationship to the song as a solo instrumentalist? Like we talked about serving the song, that kind of thing. It's your song. You're the only person playing on it. How do you interpret that?
To me, I'm not much of a like a, I guess, dramatic improviser. You might attack a certain phrase slightly differently from from show to show. But I kind of I like this idea of trying to discover what the best, like what the perfect form of that song is, right? And kind of your first iteration, your first draft is probably like writing it in the first instance and then recording it on an album, at least it is for me. And then when you go and you tour that album, when you tour that song, you're playing it 100 different sound systems, 100 different microphones, you're hearing it from 100 different angles, and you kind of figure out actually what that song should have been all along. So it's less about improvisation, more about kind of chipping away these little bits and pieces and until, you never really get there, right? Maybe you'll go too far and you'll, break the nose off the statue or whatever, but you're kind of you're just trying to approach perfection. It's like an exponential curve, man. I don't know. It's that's kind of what I like to do anyway.
So you record it first, and then after you played it a whole bunch, you start to hear the refinements.
Yeah, because I'm really, really bad at writing songs. It takes me forever. So all right, I better record this, put an album out, and then I go and tour it and go, if I recorded this now, it'd be a much better song.
What do you mean you're bad at writing songs? I've heard your songs.
I'm very slow songwriter. It takes me a long time.
Well, Yasmin, how do you see, yourself in relationship to the song? Again, as a solo, you're the only person playing the instruments. It's your music that you wrote. How do you serve the song in that and not just like shred all over the place,
For me, I guess serving the song is paramount and by far the most important thing. And like all the different techniques I use and whatever all began with the purpose of serving the song best and how to best do that. So for me, improvising comes in a lot during the composition process and when I'm actually writing the song. And then I just go through a lot of iterations and see what verse is best, what chorus is best, what bridge is best, whatever. And once the song is done, for me, the song is pretty much done. I don't do anything else to it. Is a song ever really done? I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. But for me, like in concert, the song is done. I don't really play a song that's kind of not finished in a show. So I play it pretty much the same way in most shows, unless I'm like bringing in a chamber ensemble or bringing in other performers. Then I'll do something differently. But if it's just a solo set with just me, I'll just play the song as it's meant to be played, which is why I wrote it in the first place like that.
Tell us about your guitar. What guitar are you playing right now?
This is an Ovation nylon guitar. This is my road trip guitar. So it's easy to connect it. I just need to change my string. It's too old. I did like 5 concerts with the string. I used to do 2 concerts. Every 2 concerts, I change the string. This is a string. It's a Brazilian brand string. It's very soft, but it doesn't keep so long. So I have every 2 concerts, I change the string. So a lot of guitarists ask me about what string I use. I like that because it's very soft to play this string. And the guitar is a Ovation nylon guitar. I have some handmade guitars, couple, but it's hard to travel with many guitars. Airplane is it's not so I have to decide to bring one guitar, and most of the time I plug on live concerts and recording with mic for sure. But yeah, we have to take some decisions when we are on the road.
Gwenifer, what are you playing? What were you playing earlier? What's your guitar?
So this is my Waterloo. This is my main sort of touring guitar, and to be honest, I write mostly on this. I've got like so many guitars, but this is always the nearest one to where I sit. But it's also my touring guitar. It's my Waterloo WL14L. I like a small body guitar. It's a steel string. It's pretty small body. Because of my habit of playing kind of overly aggressive. I like a smaller body because I feel like you just kind of catch the notes in the ruckus a little bit clearer. I used to play a lot of I said I still do a lot of vintage guitars, but for touring, I don't know, these are really nice because they they kind of have, they're intentionally built to a similar spec as like an old pre-war blues guitar, but also, if I do smash it to 1,000 pieces on the plane, it's not like I'm actually destroying a piece of history. Because I've got this amazing guitar behind me, which was gifted to me by Henry Kaiser, which is this guitar from I think it's from 1880, and it's absolutely insane guitar to play on, and it's amazing. But I'm terrified of it because it actually is a piece of history. So it's kind of you play it. It's a special occasion to play on that guitar, man. It's very, very nice. It's very definitely possessed by something, I reckon. Some ancient spirit.
What's the sound on that one versus the Waterloo?
They're not too dissimilar. I really rate the Waterloo because it can sound as good as this incredible thing. I would just say it's slightly bigger on this Joseph Bowman, kind of slightly bigger and warmer. I don't know. It's kind of got the prepossession of a guitar that's been around longer than any living human being. I feel like that just has a certain presence to it, regardless. And I change my strings every gig, so someone please sponsor me for strings. I'm desperate. Yeah. This is my shameless plug.
Oh my god,
it's a nightmare, man. It's because I hit them too hard. If I don't, they snap. So I use Monels, which are really nice. That's kind of one of my something a lot of people ask actually is what strings. But I use these Martin Monel strings because they're really nice. Because they sound good. They last as long as the coated strings. And they don't take very long to break in, which is when you have to change the strings 10 minutes before going on stage. That's kind of an important thing. So I do sort of recommend non-corporate sponsored strings.
Yasmin, tell us about your guitar.
So this is a custom-made guitar made by Skytop Guitars. It's actually very cool because it has very big sound ports on the side of it, instead of the kind of sound hole that's usually in the middle. And I think it just projects really well, gives the player a really cool kind of like sound where the sound just kind of busts you over the head, really, because the holes are like directed right to your head.
Yeah, they're pointing, like shaping your face there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a stereo effect, which is really cool. And this guitar is interesting because it has like little wormholes in it on the front.
Yeah, there's no sound hole. There's these little, like you call them wormholes. Are those natural holes in the wood?
Yeah, they're like mollusk holes. They are. Mollusks burrow into the wood. And the wood's pretty old. So, yeah, they made these holes. And Eric Wagenshoff, the guy from, Skytop Guitars is his brand. He repurposes this wood to make guitar tops, which is really cool. And it's great for me because the two side sound ports kind of get muffled a bit by my stomach when I lap tap acoustically. So the little holes in the front definitely like help push the sound out to whatever audience, which is great. This guitar is my main touring guitar and just the main guitar I play in general and write on and do everything on. I love this guitar. I have a lot of guitars, but this is my main one. I think I have 18 or something.
How do you mic it?
I have a pickup in it, but in the studio, usually we use like 4 or 5 mics, like 2 behind me to like capture the like sound port sound, and then 2 in the front, and then kind of 1 just placed somewhere. That's typically how we do it. It was a challenge to mic because the sound just goes all over the place, kind of, but it sounds really awesome once you dial it in. Yeah, but yeah, this guitar is, I just love it. But it's just honestly like flying with it still kind of scares me a little bit because it's just really expensive. And I love this guitar, and it just honestly allows me to play the best I can play. So
What kind of wood is it?
it's Torito hold Sitka spruce as the top, and then the back is, I don't know if y'all can see this, but the back is spalted tamarind, and the binding is bloodwood.
Bloodwood.
Yeah, I love bloodwood, man.
Metal, man.
I know, right? But I love it. It's just so red and so just dope looking. And the fretboard is ebony, or like an ebony substitute.
Gwenifer, I didn't ask, do you plug in, or are you all acoustic when you play?
I've gone through many stages of microphoning my guitars. Some might say a compulsion.
Right
It's a problem. At the moment, I'm just microphone. I've got a little DPA clip on, which I carry around with me like a little
Heck
nerd.
yeah.
Oh, sweet.
It sounds really nice. Yeah, just a little clip on DPA, man. It's actually, I think it was when we played Bristol.
I was gonna say,
yeah, it was the first.
Is that
place.
what you use then?
It's what the sound tech guy had, and he convinced. I actually bought one that evening because it was so nice. Yeah, it's
that sounded sick.
It's super nice. I recommend them, definitely.
That's the end of part 1. In part 2, our guests discuss first songs, life-changing songs, favorite tunings, and advice for finding your own voice on guitar. You can listen to it at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus or check the show notes to learn more. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is brought to you by the team at Acoustic Guitar Magazine. I'm your host, Nick Grizzle. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is directed and edited by Joey Lusterman. Tanya Gonzalez is our producer. Executive producers are Lyzy Lusterman and Stephanie Campos Broi. Our theme song was composed by Adam Perlmutter and performed for this episode by Gwenifer Raymond. If you enjoy this podcast and want to support us, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus or find the link in the show notes for this episode. As a supporter, you'll have access to exclusive bonus episodes along with other special perks. And if you're already a patron, thank you so much for your support.